massive cloud of Sahara dust is blanketing the Caribbean, sparking health concerns in the midst of the coronavirus pandemic. China stressed that the US military is deploying unprecedented numbers of forces to the Asia-Pacific region, raising the risk of an international incident. The UN Secretary-General participated in a virtual conference to address the challenges facing the United Nations Relief and Works Agency for Palestinian refugees. From the headquarters of Telesur English in Havana, Cuba, this is From the South, and I'm Katrina Goss. A massive cloud of Sahara dust is blanketing the Caribbean in the midst of the coronavirus pandemic. Our correspondent in the Dominican Republic, Daisy Toussaint, brings us more details on this phenomenon as well as the spread of the COVID-19 virus.
Hello, greetings to you and all our viewers. The cloud of Sahara dust is already affecting the Antilles and the Caribbean with high concentrations of particles. According to satellite images from the National Oceanic and Atmospheric Administration, it is also affecting southeast Cuba and the Yucatan Peninsula, while Central American countries are preparing for the arrival of the phenomenon, which can cause irritation to the eyes and mild respiratory conditions, especially for people with asthma. The Dominican Republic has felt the effects of the phenomenon since Monday. As you can see behind me, there is a dense cloud of dust that almost completely blocks out the sun. In terms of COVID-19 statistics reported in the Dominican Republic until today, the number of confirmed cases has reached 27,936 cases, and the number of fatalities has risen to 675. In neighboring Haiti, President Jovenel Moïse pardoned 415 prisoners in the framework of the decongestion of prison to limit the spread of COVID-19. We should remember that since March, following the arrival of the pandemic, the Haitian government ordered the release of prisoners according to certain criteria related to their age, previous illness, and sentences. However, social organizations have described the process as very slow. According to the latest report, Haiti has reported 5,211 cases, of which 88 have died. This is all the information we have in the Caribbean for the moment. Back to you in the studio.
A 7.5 magnitude earthquake struck southern Mexico on Tuesday, killing at least 4 people and causing buildings to shake hundreds of miles away. The quake was centered in the Pacific Ocean, about 14 miles off the coast of the southern state of Oaxaca. President Andrés Manuel López Obrador said there had been 147 aftershocks following the quake, while experts warned that more were expected.
First, I felt the shake, but it was not that bad. And then I feel a little bit stronger, and I said, I better get out. It was very strong. The shake catch us sleeping, and me and my wife were very scared. We felt it very strong amidst the COVID-19 situation, and now this, what is next?
On Tuesday, Venezuelan President Nicolas Maduro expressed his satisfaction with the almost 600 buses fully assembled thanks to the country's great transport mission. The Venezuelan president noted that the minimum goal is to achieve the production of 2,000 bus units by the end of 2020. Meanwhile, Vice President Delcy Rodriguez explained that over 1,000 transport vehicles recently arrived in the country as part of the cooperation agreement with the People's Republic of China in order to continue to improve public transport. And Venezuelan President Nicolas Maduro provided an update on the COVID-19 situation in the country this Tuesday, noting there were 58 new locally transmitted cases and 81 imported cases.
We have 81 imported cases today. Of those 81, 66 arrived from Colombia. They came through the border, so they are Colombian cases. There is 1 case from Brazil, 8 from Peru, and 6 from Ecuador. They are compatriots, fellow citizens that came walking from Peru and are continuing to arrive. When they cross the border, they arrive already infected with the coronavirus.
And Venezuelan Vice President Delcy Rodriguez also spoke about how the application of plasma is helping in the treatment of COVID-19 patients.
We have checked our protocol and treatment levels. We are at the same level of care as the rest of the world, and we can reveal that we are going to start using plasma. The plasma of recovered patients that, as you know, has had very positive results in most of the countries in which it has been used, and we are also going to start using it here in the treatment of plant in Venezuela.
Indigenous leaders and experts in Brazil are debating the impact of COVID-19 on communities in the Amazon rainforest. Indigenous organizations accuse President Jair Bolsonaro of having done nothing to contain the advance of the virus in their communities, where more than 750,000 people live. According to numbers provided by the Pan American Health Organization, there are at least 20,000 indigenous people infected in the Amazon River Basin, which runs through Brazil, Peru, Colombia, Bolivia, Ecuador, Venezuela, Guyana and Suriname. Chilean Senator Adriana Muñoz reacted to President Sebastián Piñera's announcement that he would establish an external commission to ensure motions passed by Congress were in accordance with the Constitution.
In view of the declarations of the President of the Republic, I want to state that the processing of bills that have controversy in matter of admissibility, it is regulated in the regulations of the Senate and its organic law of the Congress. Therefore, the prerogative to declare the permissibility of these bills is of the President of the Chamber of Deputies and of the President of the Senate. If the government has differences with the declaration, it has the power to go to the Constitutional Court and propose an interpretation of the constitutionality to these projects. In my opinion, it is very inappropriate what the President of the Republic is doing, because by trying to modify the powers that the National Congress has in its internal regulations, he is seriously affecting the independence and the autonomy of the powers of the state.
Some Kentucky residents reported long waits to vote in person in Lexington on Tuesday as primaries were held in the U.S. state. The primaries this Tuesday and in recent months have raised concerns about the country's ability to run a smooth election come November if the coronavirus pandemic continues. With the potential resurgence of the coronavirus in the fall, many are wondering how they will vote in November without jeopardizing their health. Some lawmakers are calling for universal voting by mail, while others are saying that it's not worth the risk. Cuban cartoonist Aristides Fernandez, known as Aris, won the grand prize in the 2020 Anti-Coronavirus International Cartoon Competition in China, with her work produced in tribute to doctors fighting against the pandemic. Our correspondent in Havana, Nayara Tado, brings us the details in the following report.
From his studio in Central Havana, Cuban artist Aristides Hernandez, known as Ares, could not remain indifferent to COVID-19 pandemic. On a daily basis, he reflected in his cartoons that was happening. One of those creations won the Grand Prix in the AYAC 2020 anti-coronavirus event based in China, a work that also reminds him of the doctor within.
And the case of doctors, the people who have been dealing with the pandemic, shows that society have to turn their attention to more important things. They have been selling us everything we do not need, and it has been demonstrated that there are things that people in the world need which are not guaranteed, such as health care.
The artist reflected the worldwide recognition of health workers in a different way.
And I try to express it from the point of view of religions in the world. The iconic images of religions in the world are those in which people express their devotion. And I try to reflect that in this image, in which it is those figures that are paying tribute to doctors, and in the manner that became common during the pandemic, which is people who are standing apart carrying posters and creating a common poster, which in this case was a poster of gratitude to health professionals, and at the same time saying that it is in them that we believe.
The work is part of more than 40 cartoons that illustrated the book entitled The World After the Coronavirus, a text that he put together with a Cuban journalist residing in Spain, Felix Lopez. From the distance, taking advantage of the opportunities of social networks, both try to reflect the challenges of countries in post-pandemic scenario.
The book is an opinion piece. What Ares and I have done is reflect the most common opinions of people anywhere in the world. the issues that are overwhelming people as regards their finances, with the 175 million jobs that are being lost worldwide, and are going to bring back the other stationary pandemic that is world hunger.
The text surpassed the virtual limits to form, on the basis of art, journalism, and psychiatry, an analysis of the social, economic, and political consequences of the novel coronavirus.
We are not going to have a better world. In any case, we are going to have a worse world, with greater economic problems, with more racism, with more attacks on people who have less, with more selfishness, and as we have seen, with more tendency for war, to meddle in the affairs of others.
Ares is one of the most awarded and internationally recognized Cuban cartoonists. Today, while he's complying with the lockdown, he draws, reflects, and together with his colleague Felix Lopez, analyzes the world after COVID-19 and applauds doctors from the drawing board. Nayara Tardo, Telesur, Havana.
And we're taking a very short break now, so don't go away. Welcome back to From the South. India and China reached a mutual consensus to withdraw from the eastern Ladakh sector. Talks were held on the Chinese side of the disputed border known as the Line of Actual Control in order to diffuse tensions in the area. Both sides agreed to disengage their troops from the friction areas in eastern Ladakh. This was the second such meeting this month.
On June 22nd, the border troops of China and India held their second Army Commander level meeting in the border region. It was also the first Army Commander level meeting since the Galwan Valley incident occurred on June 15th. This meeting shows that both China and India are willing to properly handle their differences, manage the situation and ease tensions through dialogue. On the consensus reached at the first Army Commander level meeting, the two sides exchanged views on the outstanding problems facing border control in a candid and in-depth manner, agreed to take necessary measures to push for the de-escalation of the situation. They also agreed to maintain dialogue and work jointly to promote peace and tranquility in the border areas.
And a week after clashes on their disputed Himalayan border left 20 Indian troops dead, and following virtual talks with his Indian and Chinese counterparts, Russian Foreign Minister Sergei Lavrov stressed he doesn't think China and India need any outside help to resolve their disputes.
Meetings of the military command and contacts between foreign ministers took place immediately after the border conflict. If I understand correctly, these contacts are currently continuing and none of the parties has made a statement indicating a lack of will to act, agree according to common approaches.
Mongolians are set to elect a new parliament on Wednesday despite controversies regarding candidates flouting quarantine rules and thousands of people stranded overseas unable to vote. 2,000 polling stations have been set up for Wednesday's legislative elections. Despite strict lockdown restrictions, the country's two main parties have broken bans on gatherings of over 30 people by holding big campaign rallies. The country has only reported 215 coronavirus cases and no fatalities. The ruling Mongolian People's Party is expected to gain the most from the vote. China stated on Tuesday that the US military is deploying unprecedented numbers of forces to the Asia-Pacific region, raising the risk of an international incident. Experts say the possibility of a military incident or an accidental shot fired is rising, adding that if a crisis were to erupt, the repercussions on bilateral relations would be catastrophic. According to a report, the United States has deployed more than 300,000 soldiers and 60% of its warships in the Indo-Pacific region.
The U.S. military strength is already in an overwhelming advantage in the Asia-Pacific region, but they are still seeking to increase their military deployment in the Asia-Pacific region to expand and maintain its absolute superiority.
Russia is set to stage its 75th annual Victory Day parade in Moscow on Wednesday. The parade was delayed this year due to the coronavirus pandemic, moving from May 9th to June 24th, the day the Soviet Union held its victory parade in 1945 at Moscow's Red Square. Victory Day is Russia's most important secular holiday and marks the defeat of Nazi Germany in 1945 and the end of the Second World War. Serbia has issued emergency measures in several municipalities after heavy rains caused widespread damage. According to local authorities, surging rivers led to around 700 homes being flooded in western and central Serbia, and some 70 families in the western town of Ljubovija have been forced to evacuate their homes. Meanwhile, in neighbouring Bosnia, a landslide cut off a key road connecting the central town of Tuzla with the capital Sarajevo. Portuguese authorities have reimposed COVID-19 restrictions as new cases continue to emerge in Lisbon's metropolitan areas. Commercial establishments now have to close at 8 p.m, with the exception of restaurants. Gatherings will be limited to a maximum of 10 people, and inspections will be carried out at construction workshops. Meanwhile, 345 new COVID-19 cases were reported on Monday, bringing the total number confirmed in Portugal to almost 40,000. United Nations Secretary-General Antonio Guterres has warned of a lack of international coordination in tackling the COVID-19 pandemic.
What we need is to make countries understand that acting in isolation, they are creating a situation that is getting out of control. We had waves that started in China, moved to Europe, moved to North America, now went to South America, to Africa, to India. Some people say that second waves can come at any moment. And there is a total lack of coordination among countries in the response to the COVID.
And we're taking one last short break now, but we have more stories coming up, so stay with us. Welcome back to From the South. UN Secretary-General Antonio Guterres participated in a virtual conference to address the challenges facing the United Nations Relief and Works Agency for Palestinian Refugees. The extraordinary virtual ministerial conference was co-chaired by Jordanian Foreign Minister Ayman al-Safadi and Swedish Minister for International Development Cooperation Peter Eriksson. The event highlighted the need to contribute to the UN agency so that it can bridge its funding gap this year and continue to support Palestinian refugees. At the beginning of 2018, the United States, which was one of the agency's main donors, drastically cut its contributions, leaving it with a deficit of some $250 million.
We meet at a time when all prospects for a just, comprehensive peace, that is the right of all peoples of the region, are being threatened by Israel's decision to annex 1/3 of the occupied West Bank in violation of international law. Annexation must not happen, for if it does, it will kill the two-state solution and will undermine all chances for peace. All of us who believe in international law, all of us who want peace for the whole region, must speak and must act against annexation.
Our objective today was clear: to come together to mobilize political and financial support for the vital work of UNRWA, an agency that is not only a lifeline for millions of Palestinian refugees, but also critical for regional stability.
Saudi Arabian authorities have announced restrictions to access the holy city of Mecca during the annual Hajj pilgrimage. Only people who are already present in the country will be able to undertake the pilgrimage this year. Saudi health authorities also noted that entrance will only be permitted for people below 65 years of age and with no chronic illnesses. Meanwhile, the Muslim World League and the Organization of Islamic Cooperation expressed their agreement with the decision, pointing to the health risks posed by the coronavirus pandemic.
I think for us as a Qatari will not make any difference. We still remember that 4 years back, I was myself in Mecca for Umrah during Ramadan. They knocked our door at the hotel and they asked us to leave within a week. So since that time, we are not allowed for Umrah or Hajj or visiting our relatives, nowhere. So for us, it will not make any difference, you know.
We are prohibited, with or without the DC, to visit Saudi Arabia. We do not have a consulate or embassy. This doesn't make any difference to us.
This has a great impact on the hearts of Muslims and the people who will not be able to perform Hajj this year. But for us in Qatar, unfortunately, for the past 4 years ago, we were besieged and deprived from Hajj and Umrah, and we felt the impact a long time ago.
The UN Special Representative for South Sudan, David Shearer, issued a warning on Tuesday about escalating violence in the country as the transitional government has not yet been appointed.
This violence can no longer be pigeonholed as simply intercommunal. Fighters in uniform have been spotted amongst them, suggesting that organised forces may be joining in on the conflict, which risks unravelling the ceasefire. A truly unified national government leadership would have acted promptly and stepped in to curb this conflict. Instead, the violence has been allowed to play out and is being used to sort out power arrangements at the national and subnational levels. This cycle of impunity fuels serious human rights violations where civilians once again bear the brunt.
Voters in Malawi defied the coronavirus on Tuesday to head to the polls for the second time in just over a year after President Peter Mutharika's re-election was annulled in a dramatic court ruling. The much-anticipated rerun was ordered by the Constitutional Court, which declared there were grave and widespread irregularities in the May 2019 vote, narrowly won by Mutharika. In the last vote, Mutharika, who turns 80 next month, won with 38.5% of the ballots against his main rival, Lazarus Chakwera's 35%. This time round, a candidate will have to secure more than 50% of the vote to be declared the winner.
I think I want to serve Malawians with integrity, and I want to be able to make Malawi a united nation. And I want to be able to make sure that we respect the rule of law and we are able to deal with what has impoverished us, which to some extent is the theft of public funds and the corruption. So I don't know.
Syria's ambassador to Lebanon has spoken against the latest US sanctions on Damascus.
Syria is reassessing its situation in order to strengthen its forces and its people in the face of these sanctions, because the blood that was spilled in defense of Syria's sovereignty and its dignity and its right to dignity cannot be neglected, and America realizes this. Therefore, I see it as a hopeless blow rather than behavior that shows awareness and a reading of America's interest. The blockade is a direct and blatant aggression against the dignity of all people of this region, and not just against Syria alone, because the Syrians and the Lebanese and the Palestinians and the Jordanians and the Iraqis, all of them are in the same boat, and America realizes that losses are what awaited more than the possibilities of profiting from this unjust law that violates international sovereignty and international law above all.
And we've come to the end of this news brief, but you can find these and many other stories on our website at telesurenglish.net. And you can also join us on social media, Facebook, Twitter, Instagram and YouTube. For Telesur English, I'm Katrina Goss, and thank you for watching.